immortal sin.
Heavy metal has always called itself the genre of rebellion. But what happened when some of its biggest legends challenged the one rule the scene wasn't ready to break?
Under my skin, into my bones.
From Judas Priest's Rob Halford risking his career with a historic revelation, to Freddie Mercury, David Bowie, Mina Caputo, Gaahl, Lzzy Hale, and more artists who refused to hide who they really were. These stories changed rock and metal forever.
Got a whole lot of money 'cause I play in a rock band.
Some were embraced, others faced backlash, lost fans, and even saw their careers put at risk. Today, we're uncovering the untold stories behind 25 rock and metal icons whose personal courage reshaped the history of heavy music. Stay until the end, because some of the biggest names on this list, and what they went through, may completely change the way you see metal forever. Before we begin, if you love heavy metal history, legendary rock stories, and deep dives into the biggest names in music, hit subscribe and join us for new videos every week. Now, let's dive in.
Oh yes, I'm the great.
1. Rob Halford, Judas Priest.
It's immortal sin.
Let's start with probably the most famous coming out in metal history, Rob Halford, the Judas Priest frontman, the metal god himself. Think about this timeline for a second. Judas Priest formed in 1969. Halford became the voice of heavy metal. Not just any voice, one of the greatest, most powerful vocal performances in the entire history of the genre. When people think about metal vocals, they think about Halford. That range, that command, that presence. But for years, decades actually, Halford kept a massive part of himself hidden. In 1998, during an MTV interview, he made an announcement that shook the metal world. He came out as gay. Now think about the cultural context here. 1998, heavy metal had this reputation, right? Aggressive, tough, masculine to the point of caricature, leather-clad imagery everywhere. The idea of a metal god being gay? That wasn't supposed to happen. That wasn't part of the narrative. Halford had every reason to believe this would destroy his career, that fans would turn away, that promoters would drop Judas Priest, that the metal community would reject him entirely. But something completely different happened. The fans didn't turn away. They embraced him. Because here's what people realized. Halford had already proven himself as one of the greatest vocalists in metal history. That didn't change overnight. His contribution to the genre was undeniable. His talent was undeniable. What Halford's honesty did was force the metal community to look at itself, to question its own ideas about what masculinity means, to confront its own hypocrisy. If metal was really about rebellion and breaking rules, how could it reject someone for simply being honest about who they were? Halford didn't just come out. He became an absolute advocate. He used his platform. He spoke publicly about LGBTQ+ issues in metal. He refused to hide ever again, and that took incredible courage. 2. Doug Pinnick, King's X. Next up is Doug Pinnick of King's X. And if you know progressive metal, if you know groove, if you know what it means to blend heavy guitars with actual musicianship and emotion, you know Doug Pinnick's bass work. His voice was deep, soulful. His bass lines were thunderous. King's X was never a traditional metal band in the strictest sense, but they operated in that world. They were fearless about experimentation. They blended everything together. Heavy riffs, melodic passages, emotional lyrics that actually meant something. But for years, Pinnick carried this secret. He was terrified. Absolutely terrified of what would happen if he came out. He knew the metal community. He understood the culture. He was aware that despite all the talk of rebellion, there was a darkness underneath. A real intolerance. In 1998, the same year as Halford, Pinnick made his own announcement. He came out as gay. And here's where it gets harder than Halford's story. Some of Halford's fans stuck with him. But Pinnick? He faced real backlash, real rejection. Fans literally walked away. People used hateful language. The support wasn't universal like it had been for Halford. But Pinnick didn't stop making music. He kept going. He kept proving that real metal, genuine, authentic, heavy music, it's about passion, it's about skill, it's about raw energy and musicianship, not about fitting into someone else's narrow idea of what a metal musician should be. Think about the irony here. Metal claims to be about freedom, about rebellion, about not caring what society thinks. And yet when Pinnick lived that philosophy, when he rebelled against the metal community's own narrow standards, he got rejected for it. 3. Gaahl, Gorgoroth, Wardruna. Now we're going into one of the darkest corners of metal, literally and figuratively. Black metal. If you know black metal, you know it's uncompromising. It's extreme. It's a scene built on intensity, and often, let's be honest, some genuinely disturbing ideology. Gaahl, the vocalist of Gorgoroth, later involved with Wardruna. He's one of black metal's most feared figures. Chilling presence, brutal vocals, the kind of artist who helped define what modern black metal even sounds like. This is important context because black metal specifically prides itself on being anti-mainstream, anti-establishment, a scene full of rebels and rule breakers. It's literally built on the idea of rejecting normal society. So in 2008, Gaahl came out as gay. And here's the thing that's absolutely revealing about the metal community. The reaction was strangely predictable. Some fans refused to believe it. Some turned against him completely. Others whispered behind his back. People lost their minds. Black metal had always been filled with talk of rebellion, breaking rules, embracing darkness and going against the grain. But when Gaahl lived that out, when he broke one of his own scene's unspoken rules by being authentic about his sexuality, the hypocrisy became undeniable. Some people in the black metal community literally questioned whether he could still make heavy music, whether his contributions meant anything anymore. It was exposed prejudice dressed up as artistic concern. Despite everything, despite the backlash that was real and documented, Gaahl continued making music. Dark, powerful, uncompromising. He showed that true strength comes from being fearless even when the entire world, or at least the parts of it that matter to you, is against you. And that raises a question the black metal scene still hasn't answered. If you're supposed to be the ultimate rebels, how do you reject someone for simply being themselves? 4. Paul Masvidal and Sean Reinert. Progressive metal is where technicality meets emotion, where complexity serves the song rather than existing for its own sake. And two of the most important figures in progressive metal's entire history are Paul Masvidal and Sean Reinert. These guys were pioneers. Cynic, death. If you know anything about progressive metal or death metal innovation in the 1990s, you know their names. Their technical skills were genuinely unmatched. Their creativity set them completely apart from everyone else. But there was something they kept hidden for decades. For years, they avoided talking about their personal lives. And there was a real reason for that. They knew the metal scene wasn't always welcoming to people who were different. The fear wasn't irrational. It was justified based on what they were seeing in the community. In 2014, both Masvidal and Reinert came out as gay. Think about the timeline here. 2014. By this point, society had shifted. We'd seen Rob Halford, we'd seen other musicians come out. But the metal community, still skeptical, still resistant. When these guys came out, their statement was bigger than just themselves. It was a direct challenge to an entire industry that had ignored LGBTQ+ musicians for decades. They were essentially saying, some of metal's greatest musicians are gay. How many others have been hiding in the shadows? How many amazing artists have we lost or never discovered because of this culture of silence? The response was mixed. Some fans supported them completely. Others, and this is documented, acted as if their music had suddenly lost its value. As if their sexual orientation somehow diminished their technical ability or their artistic vision. But here's the thing. Talent doesn't disappear overnight. Their skills remained unmatched. their contributions remained undeniable. Their coming out wasn't just about them. It was about every musician who ever felt forced to hide who they were. If metal is supposed to be fearless, why is honesty treated as a risk? 5. Roddy Bottum, Faith No More. Faith No More was never a typical band. They mixed genres, they took risks. They refused to be put in a box, whether that box was musical or cultural. Roddy Bottum was their keyboardist, and he was essential to their sound. That unique blend of funk, metal, rock, electronic elements, Bottum's keyboards were woven through everything. In 1993, he did something that was almost completely unheard of in the metal world at that time. He came out as gay, and we're talking 1993 here. This is before mainstream conversations about LGBTQ+ rights were even happening, before social media, before the internet as we know it. The music industry was filled with fear and silence around these topics. Most artists stayed quiet. They understood, correctly, that speaking up might cost them everything. But Bottum didn't stay silent. He chose to live openly. He knew it might cost him fans. He knew people might turn away. And yes, some people did walk away. But here's what didn't happen. The band didn't crumble. If anything, it made them stronger. It proved that music should always be about the art, not about the assumptions people make about the artist. Looking back now, it seems almost strange that being open about who you are was once considered such a dangerous thing. Suicidally risky even. But metal has always built its entire identity on defiance, on standing up against the world, on refusing to back down. Yet when Bottum and these other musicians actually stood up for their own truth, they faced real resistance from the very community that claimed to be rebellious. What does that tell us about metal? Can a genre built on breaking rules finally break its own outdated views? 6. Otep Shamaya, Otep. Otep Shamaya isn't just another metal singer. She's a force, an absolute force. Her band Otep mixes heavy metal with spoken word. Their songs feel like battle cries, like manifestos, like calls to action. And Shamaya is the driving force behind all of it. She's openly lesbian, and she's never been afraid to say exactly what she thinks. In a world where some artists hide their true selves to protect their careers, Shamaya stands tall. She refuses to be silenced. Her lyrics scream about power, about injustice, about fighting for what's right. She proves she's more than just a musician. She's a warrior. She's an activist. She's someone who uses her platform and doesn't apologize for it. But being bold comes with a real price. The metal world hasn't always welcomed different voices, and many have actively tried to push Shamaya aside. Some listeners absolutely love her message. They get what she's doing. Others call it too political, too aggressive, too much. But here's the thing. Love her or hate her, nobody can deny she's made an impact. She's carved out a place for herself in metal, a significant place. And she refuses to let anyone take that away. Even with the constant criticism, Shamaya keeps pushing forward. She continues to perform. She writes music that means something. She speaks out. She shows that being different isn't a weakness, it's a strength. The world of heavy metal is full of loud voices, but hers rises above them all. And the question that remains is simple. How much longer can the industry ignore the voices of those who refuse to fit the mold? 7. Mina Caputo, Life of Agony. Mina Caputo's story is one of courage and genuine transformation. She was known for years as Keith Caputo, the frontman of Life of Agony. That band shook the metal scene with raw energy and emotional depth that was ahead of its time. The band mattered. Caputo mattered. In 2011, she made an announcement that changed everything. She came out as transgender. She made the decision to live as her authentic self. The reaction was immediate. Some fans supported her completely. Others turned away. But Caputo didn't waver. She didn't second-guess herself. Her journey wasn't easy. The metal world has always been full of this tough, masculine energy. And there were absolutely people who believed she no longer belonged. That she'd somehow invalidated her previous work. That she was no longer a real metal musician. But Caputo knew that living a lie wasn't an option. She faced cruel comments, whispers behind her back, outright rejection from parts of the industry. Instead of hiding, she stepped forward. She proved that real strength comes from being true to yourself, no matter the cost. No matter who rejects you, despite everything, despite the cruelty and the rejection, she continues to perform. Her voice carries the same fire and passion it always did. Maybe even more, because now she's singing from a place of authenticity. Some people try to erase her story or diminish her contributions. But she refuses to be ignored. She forced the metal scene to face something it had tried to avoid for decades, the idea that metal belongs to everyone. Not just people who fit old stereotypes. Not just people who look a certain way or present a certain way. That's revolutionary, and it cost her significantly. But she did it anyway. 8. Lzzy Hale, Halestorm. Lzzy Hale has never played by the rules. As the frontwoman of Halestorm, she carved out a space in rock and metal that proves women can be just as loud, just as aggressive, and just as commanding as any man in the industry. Her music challenges the status quo. It always has, but her personal life challenges it too. She's openly bisexual, and she refuses to let anyone tell her who she should be or who she should love. For years, Hale has used her platform to encourage self-expression, to tell people that being authentic matters. But while she celebrates that authenticity, she's faced real resistance. The music industry is still packed with old ideas about what rock stars should look like, what they should sound like, even who they should love. Some have praised her honesty and her openness. Others have dismissed it, claiming it's just for attention or for shock value. But Hale doesn't need approval. She's already proven herself as a musician. Her music speaks for itself. Her songs are about breaking free from expectations, and that's exactly what she does every time she steps on stage. She sings about love, about heartbreak, about power, about pain, but more than anything, she sings about being yourself. The question now is, how many more artists will it take before the industry fully embraces the truth that rock and metal belong to everyone? 9. Brian Molko, Placebo. Brian Molko has always been a mystery, and that's exactly how he likes it. As the frontman of Placebo, he challenged gender norms. He challenged expectations. He challenged everything people thought they knew about what rock stars should be. His androgynous style, his haunting lyrics. He created a space for people who felt like outsiders, people who didn't fit into neat little boxes. But his rebellion was more than just aesthetic. It was a statement about identity and authenticity. Molko is openly bisexual, and he's never shied away from talking about it. He discusses identity. He discusses sexuality. He discusses the actual struggles of being different in an industry that wants you to fit a mold. Being open comes with real costs. While some celebrated his boldness and his willingness to be vulnerable, others tried to tear him down. Critics called his style an act, called his words too dramatic, called his presence too unconventional for rock music. But Molko never begged for approval. He never tried to explain himself. He existed on his own terms, and if people didn't understand, well, they were simply left behind. That's genuine confidence. That's genuine artistry. 10. Freddie Mercury, Queen. Freddie Mercury didn't just sing. He commanded stadiums. He commanded the world. His voice could shake buildings. His presence could hold millions in absolute awe. His confidence made him unforgettable, undeniable, a genuine force of nature. Queen became one of the biggest bands in history. Mercury became one of the greatest performers who ever lived. But while the world adored his talent, there was always a question in the background. Who was Freddie Mercury really? What was his personal life? He never put a label on himself. But his relationships spoke volumes. His flamboyant persona spoke volumes. In a time when being different was genuinely dangerous, Mercury still lived as freely as he could manage. But even as he became one of the greatest performers of all time, he carried burdens that few could see. The pressure was immense. Rumors swirled constantly. And despite all his fame, despite being adored by millions, he remained an enigma to the world. Then tragedy struck. In 1991, Freddie Mercury died from complications related to AIDS. The announcement shocked the world. Suddenly, the industry that had tried to keep his personal life quiet was forced to confront the reality of his struggles. The reality of what he'd been dealing with privately. He'd spent years giving everything to the world. His talent, his energy, his artistry. Yet, in his final moments, he fought his battles alone. In many ways, he was isolated by the very world that celebrated him. Even in death, his legacy refused to fade. His music still plays. His voice still echoes in stadiums worldwide. His influence can be seen in countless artists who came after. But the story of Freddie Mercury raises a question that we still haven't fully answered. How many artists have we lost? How many have suffered in silence? How different would history be if the world had simply let him be honest while he was alive? 11. David Bowie. David Bowie changed the music world forever. Literally changed it. He brought theatrical performances. He brought innovative sound design. He refused to be categorized. Most people know him as Ziggy Stardust. Fewer realize he openly identified as bisexual. That was revolutionary at the time. His boldness in questioning gender roles and sexuality broke barriers. Not just in rock, but in heavy music scenes too. Multiple artists in heavy metal have drawn direct inspiration from his willingness to embrace his identity without apology. Bowie's influence stretches far beyond just his music. He redefined what it meant to be an artist, especially in genres that resisted change. He showed that you could be experimental and still be heavy, that you could challenge social norms and still be respected as a musician. But did the world truly understand how much he risked? His androgynous looks, his daring lyrics, his performances full of unfiltered expression. They didn't just make him a star, they made him a target. Rock and heavy metal had always thrived on rebellion, but even within that space dedicated to rebellion, Bowie stood out. He was challenging not just musical norms, but social ones, the entire structure of how society viewed identity and expression. Would the music industry have evolved the same way without his influence? That's impossible to know. But we do know that his impact was seismic. His stage presence was electric, almost otherworldly. He left audiences breathless. Some embraced his fearless image completely. Others ridiculed and rejected him without mercy. But he never cared. He kept pushing boundaries. He forced the industry to reckon with ideas that most people were too afraid to even think about, let alone discuss. Even today, his impact can be seen in heavy metal acts that mix dramatic stage presence with deeply personal themes. That's his influence. His legacy serves as a reminder that real artists don't just follow rules, they obliterate them entirely. 12. Janis Joplin. Janis Joplin's raw and electrifying voice made her one of the most unforgettable figures in rock history. Full stop. She's legendary. Her personal life was just as intense as her performances. She had relationships with both men and women. She never made official public statements about her sexuality, but those who knew her understood that she lived on her own terms. Completely. The emotional power of her performances laid the groundwork for so many metal vocalists who bring that same level of raw passion and vulnerability to their music. Joplin's fearless approach to life and to music continues to inspire generations of artists across every genre you can imagine. But did the world ever truly understand her struggles? Beneath her powerful voice and wild performances was a person searching for something deeper, searching for acceptance, for belonging, for maybe even love, in a world that often felt cold and judgmental. Joplin didn't fit the mold of a typical rock star, and she genuinely didn't care. Her voice was rough, full of fire, unlike anything people had heard before. She poured her entire soul into her music. The world couldn't look away, but being different came at a real cost. The loneliness, the heartbreak, the constant battle between what she wanted and what society demanded. If she had been open about her sexuality in a different time, if the world had been more accepting, would things have been different for her? Would she have survived? Her story reminds us that even the loudest voices can be silenced by a world that refuses to understand, that refuses to accept. 13. Billie Joe Armstrong. Green Day. Billie Joe Armstrong made waves in 1995 when he came out as bisexual. Green Day leans more toward punk than traditional heavy metal, but their impact on alternative and heavy music is absolutely undeniable. Armstrong has been vocal about the struggles of living in a world that often rejects non-traditional identities. His honesty encouraged more inclusivity in rock and metal communities, helping other musicians feel comfortable being authentic. Even as Green Day evolved over the decades, Armstrong never backed down from speaking his truth. He proved that identity and artistry go hand in hand. They're connected. You can't separate them. But what was the cost of that honesty? Coming out in the mid-1990s, in an industry dominated by traditional masculinity, wasn't an easy decision. He could have lost fans, opportunities, respect from peers. Did he hesitate before revealing something so personal? Probably. Anyone would. But he did it anyway. Armstrong's music is packed with anger, rebellion, undeniable energy that speaks to outsiders and misfits. His lyrics often reflect his personal struggles, both political and deeply personal. He's faced criticism and outright rejection from parts of the rock world that weren't ready for his truth. Parts of the metal community that actively resisted, but he never stopped. He kept writing, kept playing, kept pushing back against stereotypes. His presence in the music industry is proof that talent and honesty can coexist, even in a world that sometimes seems to prefer lies. 14. Steve Brooks, Torch. Steve Brooks is the mastermind behind Torch, and he's created something completely unique in heavy music. His signature blend of sludge and stoner metal is unmistakable. He came out as gay early in his career. That decision set him apart in a genre often perceived as hyper-masculine and actively unwelcoming to anyone different. Some people might have expected significant backlash, but Brooks continued to push forward, letting his music speak louder than any criticism. The aggressive but melodic sound of Torch showcases his talent without any compromise whatsoever. Brooks' impact extends far beyond just his band. He shattered assumptions about who actually belongs in heavy music. He proved that passion and authenticity outweigh stereotypes every single time. But how many doors were closed to him because of that honesty? Did he ever wonder what different opportunities might have come his way if he'd stayed silent? The metal world has long been a space of aggression, intensity, and sometimes genuinely narrow-minded views of masculinity. Brooks shattered that perception completely. He didn't ask for permission. He simply existed as himself and made incredible music. He proved that being heavy has nothing to do with sexuality and everything to do with heart, with passion, with authenticity. Yet despite his contributions, he remains underappreciated, underrecognized. That's something the metal community needs to fix. 15. Freddy Cricien, Madball. Freddy Cricien's place in hardcore punk and metal is undeniable. Full stop. Leading Madball, he helped shape an aggressive, unapologetic sound that influenced generations of musicians. Many fans were shocked to learn about his sexuality, given that the hardcore scene has always had a reputation for tough, hyper-masculine culture. It wasn't a welcoming space for people who didn't fit a very specific mold. But Cricien's authenticity never wavered. His presence in the genre challenges outdated ideas and proves that identity has absolutely zero impact on raw talent and artistic vision. His influence within the heavy music world remains strong. He's inspired fans and musicians alike to be true to themselves without fear of rejection. But has the hardcore community truly embraced change? Or is Cricien still fighting against an old mentality that refuses to die? The hardcore scene has long been known for raw energy and sometimes brutal attitudes. It wasn't traditionally a place where vulnerability was welcomed, where people could be open about who they were. Cricien changed that. He stood in the center of it all, refusing to be anything but himself, and in doing that, he made room for others to do the same. His music speaks to outsiders, the misunderstood, the ones who refuse to conform, and yet, how many musicians still hesitate to follow his path? How many still hide? His career stands as proof that breaking barriers isn't easy, but it's necessary. 16. Mike Patton, Faith No More, Mr. Bungle, Tomahawk. Mike Patton is a name that every true rock and metal fan knows. His voice, his stage performances, his unpredictable musical style have made him stand out for decades. He's never cared about following rules, whether in music or in life. While he hasn't stuck to specific labels, Patton has openly discussed being attracted to both men and women, something that many fans didn't expect from a heavy metal frontman. His confidence in being himself challenges old ideas about what rock stars should be. It proves that metal isn't just about aggression and loud guitars. It's about breaking barriers. It's about authenticity. His ability to move between different musical styles, from Faith No More to Mr. Bungle to Tomahawk, shows that creativity has no limits, just like identity has no limits. Those who believe metal is all about being tough and close-minded should take a close look at Patton. He's always done things his own way, making absolutely no apologies for who he is. If metal is supposed to be about rebellion, then Patton has been one of the most fearless rebels in the entire genre's history. 17. Jonesy, Sigur Rós. Jonesy's music might not have the crushing guitars of traditional heavy metal, but his influence on the genre is absolutely undeniable. His ability to create dreamy, emotional soundscapes has inspired countless metal musicians, even if they don't realize it. That emotional depth matters. That vulnerability matters. Jonesy has been openly gay for years. He's never hidden who he is or let the music industry define him. His voice is haunting. His performances are mesmerizing. His songs have a power that speaks directly to the soul. He's a reminder that metal isn't just about volume or distortion. It's about passion. It's about intensity. It's about emotion. Despite his undeniable influence, some fans still resist the idea that a musician like him could be connected to heavy music. But true artists don't belong in a single category. They transcend categories. Jonesy's impact is felt across all genres. His openness about his personal life has inspired fans worldwide to be their true selves. He's proven that honesty and bravery belong in music just as much as any guitar riff or blast beat. Once won. 18. Troy Sanders, Mastodon. Troy Sanders has never been the type to seek attention for his personal life. But his presence in heavy metal has spoken louder than words ever could. As the bassist and vocalist of Mastodon, he's helped shape the sound of progressive metal, creating music that's both complex and emotionally powerful, technically impressive and deeply human. While Sanders hasn't made his sexuality a major topic, his support for the LGBTQ+ community has always been clear, consistent, unwavering. Mastodon's music has always been about pushing boundaries, both in sound and in message. Heavy metal has long been seen as a place of strict masculinity and narrow-minded thinking. But Sanders and his bandmates have proven that the genre can be open to new ideas. By refusing to conform to outdated expectations, they've made it clear that metal is for everyone, not just a select group. His presence alone challenges old stereotypes about what a metal musician should be. If Mastodon's music is about exploration, and it absolutely is, then Sanders himself is a perfect example of that philosophy. 19. Bob Mould, Husker Du, Sugar. Bob Mould didn't just play music. He changed the game. He was playing loud, fast, and aggressive long before the music industry was comfortable with who he actually was. Long before people like him were accepted. He came out as gay in the 1990s. That was a risk, especially in rock and metal. At a time when the music scene was still filled with homophobia, Mould stood his ground. He wasn't interested in hiding. He wasn't going to apologize for who he was. He refused both options completely. His music, filled with raw emotion and pure frustration, became an anthem for outsiders. For people who felt like they didn't belong anywhere. His guitar work was aggressive, innovative. His lyrics were deeply personal. His influence stretched across multiple generations of musicians. That's undeniable. While many rock and metal fans respected his music, they often ignored or downplayed his personal struggles. But Mould didn't back down. He kept making music on his own terms, showing that identity and artistry are deeply connected. If he had given in to pressure, If he'd stayed silent, the rock world would have lost one of its greatest pioneers. That's the reality. 20-0. J.D. Samson. Le Tigre Men. J.D. Samson has never fit into the mold of a traditional rock star, and that's exactly why their impact is so important. As a non-binary musician, they've pushed back against the rigid gender roles that have dominated rock and metal for decades. These roles that seemed permanent, unquestionable. Their music is loud, unapologetic, filled with themes of resistance and equality, with calls to action, with genuine anger at injustice. JD has used their platform to challenge the music industry's narrow definition of what a rock musician should be. They've refused to accept limitations. Despite pushback, real, documented pushback, they've never been afraid to stand up for themselves and for others. Their presence in the music world proves that rock and metal aren't just for one type of person. They're for everyone who refuses to be silenced, who refuses to hide. By breaking down barriers, JD has helped create a space where future musicians won't have to fight as hard just to be accepted. They won't have to choose between authenticity and career. The music industry is slow to change, glacially slow. But artists like JD are proof that change is happening. It's real. It's accelerating. 21. Laura Jane Grace. Against Me. Laura Jane Grace has never been afraid to stand up and speak her truth, no matter how uncomfortable it made others. As the lead singer of Against Me, she's spent years breaking down walls and defying expectations. She's made a career out of challenging everything. When she came out as transgender in 2012, it shook the music world. Many artists fear that kind of backlash. They fear losing everything: their fans, their career, their place in the industry. But Grace never hesitated. She was honest, completely honest. She prioritized her authentic self over her career. Against Me is a punk band, but its raw energy and deep emotions have shaped heavy music in ways that simply cannot be ignored. That's not opinion, that's documented influence. Her lyrics cut deep. They expose struggles with identity, personal battles, the pressure to conform to what others expect. The sound of her voice, full of pain and defiance, carries the same weight as any metal scream. It's heavy. It matters. She's proven that true heavy music isn't just about loud guitars. It's about raw emotion, fearless honesty, challenging norms and refusing to accept the status quo. Some may try to write off her influence or diminish it, but that's impossible. Grace hasn't just survived in an industry known for rigid, outdated views. She's thrived. She's become more relevant. Anyone who underestimates her impact on heavy music is simply refusing to see reality. 22. Daniel Lønnquist, Catatonia. Some musicians keep their personal lives private, but their work speaks for them loudly and clearly. Daniel Lønnquist, the former drummer of Catatonia, is one of those musicians. His drumming helped shape Catatonia's heavy, melancholic sound, making it one of the most emotionally powerful bands in all of metal. He didn't just play the drums. He built the heartbeat of their music. Every song breathes with his presence. Catatonia's songs are filled with sorrow, darkness, deep emotions that connect with listeners on a fundamental level. Lønnquist made that possible. He created the foundation. Though he rarely speaks about his personal life publicly, his support for LGBTQ+ rights has been clear. Metal has long had a reputation for being aggressive and unyielding. Lønnquist's work proves that true strength comes from vulnerability, not from toughness. His music doesn't just make people headbang, it makes them feel. It affects them, it changes them. The doom and progressive metal scenes have been forever changed by Catatonia, and Lønnquist's contributions are undeniable. Some might try to claim that emotion has no place in metal, but they're missing the entire point. Music this powerful, this raw, is heavier than any breakdown or blast beat. That's just factual. Lønnquist helped push metal into new territory, and his influence will never fade. Anyone who doesn't recognize his impact is refusing to accept how metal has evolved. 23. Brian Slagel. Heavy metal isn't just built by musicians. It's shaped by the people behind the scenes, the label owners, the producers, the visionaries who see potential. Brian Slagel is one of the most important figures in metal history. Full stop. Without him, the genre would look completely different. As the founder of Metal Blade Records, he played a major role in launching some of the biggest metal bands in history. His label brought bands to the forefront that otherwise might have been completely ignored. Slayer, Metallica, Testament, Megadeth. The influence is undeniable. His work has shown that heavy metal isn't just about aggression. It's about giving a voice to those who refuse to be silenced, to those who don't fit into mainstream music. Slagel has never shied away from supporting LGBTQ+ artists. Even in an industry resistant to change, he understands that metal is about rebellion, about breaking boundaries, about pushing limits. Those who think the genre belongs to a single type of person are living in the past. They're refusing to evolve. Slagel has built a legacy that proves metal is for everyone. His work hasn't just shaped the past, it's defining the future. It's shaping what metal becomes. Anyone who tries to downplay his influence on heavy music is literally denying reality. 24. Patrick Wolf. Heavy music doesn't always come from where you expect it. Patrick Wolf may not be a traditional metal musician, but his work carries a weight that cannot be ignored or dismissed. His music is dark, emotional, haunting, qualities that metal fans have long been drawn to across multiple genres. As an openly gay artist, he's refused to fit into anyone's expectations. He's pushed against the idea that music should be easily defined or categorized. He blends folk, electronic, and heavy influences to create something completely unique, something that exists in its own space. His songs are filled with deep emotions, intense storytelling, and a theatrical edge that very few artists can match. His presence in the music world forces people to reconsider what heavy music really is. It's not just about distortion and growls, it's about depth, intensity, raw emotion expressed fearlessly. Wolf's dramatic performances and deep lyrics hold the same power as any metal anthem. That's not debatable. Some might try to dismiss his connection to heavy music, but they're missing the bigger picture entirely. True heaviness isn't about genre, it's about emotion, expression, breaking expectations. Wolf's music challenges. It confronts. It refuses to be ignored. Anyone who doesn't see his place in heavy music simply isn't looking hard enough. 25. Pete Shelley, Buzzcocks. Some musicians break boundaries long before the world is ready for them. Pete Shelley was one of those musicians. As the frontman of the Buzzcocks, he was a pioneer in punk. But his influence didn't stop with punk. It extended far beyond. Punk and metal have always been connected. They share DNA. They share philosophy. Shelley's work helped shape the energy and rebellion that metal thrives on. He was open about his bisexuality in the 1970s. The 1970s. Think about that for a second. A time when the world was far less accepting, when consequences were real and severe. He didn't hide who he was, even when it would have been easier, even when staying silent would have protected his career. His music was raw, filled with frustration, longing, and a refusal to conform. That energy carried over into alternative metal, hardcore, punk, and countless other genres that grew from punk's roots. His influence is impossible to erase. He inspired musicians to be fearless, to push back against expectations, to embrace their truth. His legacy is one of defiance, of boldness, of refusing to be put into a box. Those who try to separate punk from metal are ignoring historical truth. They've always been two sides of the same coin, connected, inseparable. Shelley's impact on heavy music is absolutely undeniable. To overlook his contributions is to ignore history itself. 25 stories, 25 musicians, who risked everything to be authentic. To be honest, to refuse the metal community's demand for silence. And here's what's important to understand. These aren't just stories about personal courage. They're stories about what happens when an industry built on rebellion refuses to practice what it preaches. Metal claims to be about breaking rules, about defying expectations, about standing against the world. But when these musicians stood up for their own truth, when they broke the biggest rule of all, by being honest, the reaction was mixed at best. Some fans embraced them, some rejected them. Some still do, but something shifted, each coming out, each brave decision to be authentic. It shifted the culture a little bit. It forced conversations. It opened doors for the next person. If you made it this far, you understand now. You understand that metal is bigger than any one stereotype. It belongs to everyone brave enough to claim it. So here's what I need from you. If this video meant something, if these stories matter to you, please hit that like button and subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below with your favorite metal musician and why they matter to you. And turn on those notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive into metal history. We're doing a breakdown of underrated LGBTQ+ musicians in the underground metal scene that you absolutely cannot miss. Thank you for sticking with me through all 25 of these incredible stories. Metal is for everyone. That's the message. That's the truth. I'll see you in the next one.